I don't see Councilman Holmes in the meeting, but I'm sure that he will catch up. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay, I can only hear you, Amy.
I should be the only one with a microphone on right now.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Let me know when we're ready to go. Mike, I'm sure will just join us when he's able to.
You guys good? I think we can start now.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and reconvene our meeting. We were in closed session and we have nothing to report. I'd like to substitute the previous roll call so we don't have to call roll again. And given the fact that we have nothing to report, even though it's not on the agenda, Councilman Berland, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely. Would you please stand? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And just so for the purposes of the public, I am here via Zoom for Just Cause. I am in Washington, D.C. on an advocacy trip. So I am again using one of two Just Causes. Let's see here. We have mayor's commendations and proclamations and acknowledgements. And before we read, there are two proclamations. I understand we have a special guest in the audience. I can't see him, but I understand that he's there. As you know, we have offered the new city manager position to Sean. Sean, there he is. I see his hand waving. Welcome, Sean. We're very pleased to have you aboard. Looking forward to making everything official in a couple of weeks, but thank you very much for coming to our meeting today. And I will tell you that your council are not happy with me. They haven't communicated that they are not happy. There's a couple of them here. So anyway, we look forward to working with you. All right, as I mentioned, we do have two mayor's proclamations on our agenda this evening. Vice Mayor Riddell Harris, I would appreciate it greatly if you would go to the dais. The first proclamation that I'll read is for Autism Acceptance Month, which is April 1st through the 30th of 2023. Whereas April 2023 is National Autism Acceptance Month. An autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability that can cause social, communication, and behavioral challenges. And people with ASD may behave, communicate, interact, and learn in ways that are different from most other people. There is often nothing about how they look that sets them apart from other people. The abilities of people with ASD can vary significantly. And as children with ASD become adolescents and young adults, they may have difficulties developing and maintaining friendships, communicating with peers and adults, or understanding what behaviors are expected in school or on the job. They may come to the attention of healthcare providers because they also have conditions such as anxiety, depression, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which occur more often in people with ASD than in people without ASD. And current treatments for ASD seek to reduce symptoms that interfere with daily functioning and quality of life. ASD affects each person differently, meaning that people with ASD have unique strengths and challenges and different treatment needs. Treatment plans usually involve multiple professionals and are catered to the individual. And the CDC is currently working on one of the largest US studies to date on ASD. The study, called the Study to Explore Early Development, was designed to look at the risk factors and behaviors related with ASD. The CDC is now conducting a follow-up study of older children who are enrolled in SEED to determine the health, functioning, and needs of people with ASD and other developmental disabilities as they mature. And therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Alice Dowden Calvillo, on behalf of the City Council of Auburn, declare the month of April 2023 to be Autism Acceptance Month in the City of Auburn in honor of those that have autism and their families. And we have an individual here to receive that proclamation.
Thank you. If you would like, you're welcome to say something. You don't have to.
Well, thank you, Ms. Mayor. We appreciate it, and it is our honor to serve our community and individuals with autism. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for all your hard work. We appreciate that. And thank you very much, Vice Mayor. The second,
Signed it, so I'm gonna get it signed and then get it back to you.
sorry, I wasn't able to sign that, so I will do that when I get in.
Real quick, Madam Mayor, Ryan Canan, the Chief of Police.
Yes.
So obviously, this month with the proclamation Autism Acceptance Month, just want to highlight one of the social awareness patches that the police department does, which is the multicolored puzzle pieces patch that we have, as well as you'll notice some of our officers this month are wearing the blue shield and the blue star. So, this is one of those things that does affect not just, certain individuals, but our entire community, even staff and our staff's families. So again, we're glad we could be a part of this year.
Thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate that. And thank you to the police department for doing yet another one of those wonderful awareness patches. We really do appreciate that. All right, the next proclamation on the agenda is May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Whereas Lyme disease is often a misunderstood illness that causes serious health problems if it is not caught early and properly treated. And Lyme disease is a bacterial infection caused by, oh boy, the Spiralici Borrelii Burgdorferi, and is primarily transmitted by the bite of an infected tick. The disease was first identified, it's no laughing matter, I apologize. The disease was first identified in North America in the 1970s in Lyme, Connecticut, for which it was named. And since that time, the disease has been found in all 50 states in the United States. The reach of Lyme disease is global, having been reported in more than 60 countries on 6 continents and several islands. Where Lyme disease is a complex multi-system illness, early signs of infection may include rash and flu-like symptoms, including fever, muscle aches, headaches, and fatigue. Usually, the disease responds to prompt treatment with appropriate antibiotics. If untreated or inadequately treated, however, Lyme disease can invade multiple organs of the body, including the brain and nervous system. In those instances, patients can become increasingly disabled over time, suffering crippling muscle and joint pain, neurological impairment, psychological disorders, and a host of other symptoms that can lead to financial hardship, job loss, broken families, increased numbers of people on disability or welfare, and even death. Since there is no reliable form of testing that can be accurately pinpoint Lyme disease, getting a proper diagnosis and prompt treatment is often extremely difficult. And Lyme disease affects people of all ages, but is most common in children and older adults, and people who spend time outdoors in wooded, grassy areas, including park rangers and firefighters. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, statistics on average, 467,000 new cases of Lyme disease are reported in the United States each year. Up to 40% of Lyme disease cases result in long-term health problems, suggesting approximately 132,000 patients annually. And now, therefore, I, Alice Dowden Calvillo, Mayor of the City of Auburn, on behalf of the City Council, do proclaim the month of May 2023 as Lyme Disease Awareness Month and urge awareness amongst our residents. And thank you very much, Madam Vice Mayor, for presenting the resolution that I will sign as soon as I get back.
If you'd like to say. If you want to say a little something.
Oh, sure. Thank you so much for your support again this year. I'm Melissa Moya. I am the CEO of Lyme Fight Foundation here in Sacramento, sorry. I am a Lyme patient. The foundation is kind of my silver lining for the journey. I've been in treatment for 4 years and I've been searching for answers for 7. So it is definitely a long journey. Our foundation is working on awareness and education. We have a patient package program that we send out to patients, just a little care package to say we're thinking of them. We have tick kits, what I gave you guys a sample of. We have those for everybody. You can go on our website and just order one and we will mail it to you. And then we're working on getting into our schools and sharing safety information for them. So thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you so very much. We appreciate all your work and thank you for providing the test kits. We appreciate that as well. All right, next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda as proposed. Well, I can see the audience there. That's great. So are there any changes or questions with regards to the agenda as proposed, council? Seeing and hearing none, without objection, we'll consider the agenda approved. That shall be the order. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have several items on consent items 1 through 6 on consent. Council, are there any requests to remove items from the consent calendar? I don't hear.
It's 1 through 7.
I'm sorry, 1 through 7. Did I say 1 through 6?
Yes.
I apologize. I had writing over the number 7, so you're correct. Thank you very much, Madam Councilwoman. Items 1 through 7. Council, any questions or concerns with the agenda as proposed, the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there any public comment on the consent agenda? Hearing no public comment, council, what is your pleasure? Do we have a motion to adopt?
I move we approve the consent agenda as specified. 1
I'll
through
second.
7.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that the motion has been adopted unanimously. Next item on the agenda, item number 8. This is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on items not scheduled on the agenda today. Please note that the council cannot engage or take action on said items, but we can refer them to staff and potential consideration by the council at another meeting. With that said, is there any public comment at this time? I'm unable to see if anyone is getting up and walking to the lectern, so I will depend on you, Madam Clerk, to let me know if anybody is. No, I see. Thank you for showing me the lectern. All right, I see no public comment. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment online?
There is no public comment.
All right, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, move to the next item on the agenda. This is a business item. The first item on the agenda, item number 9, Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce, continued use of city-owned property for the community billboard. I'll go ahead and defer to you, Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report actually will be given by Jonathan Wright, who is joining us via Zoom.
One moment while I let him into the meeting room.
Perhaps Councilman Holmes is in the meeting room too.
He has yet to join.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm here.
Yes. Good
All right.
evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, members of the council, members of the public. I apologize for being remote. I'm going to say this is my just cause as well. You know, there's nothing I like better than a city council meeting. So this matter goes way back, actually. So it started in about 1989 when the state gave up surplus some right-of-way to the city. The city approved the acquisition of the right-of-way for the purpose of partnering with the Chamber of Commerce for the placement of a billboard. So we fast forward many years to an agreement that was drafted by Bob Richardson, which I was gifted upon my arrival and been working with the chamber and the districts to see if that was the right fit. The agreement was for the districts, both Old Town and Downtown, as well as the city, to participate equally and financially in the maintenance and use of the billboard. Now, after talking to the districts, financially, that wasn't in a great position for them to be in. And the city, of course, being a participant was something we were not necessarily interested in doing. And so really looking at what we need to do, and after looking at the fact that it was owned by the chamber, it's on city-owned property, and that we have the liability if somebody hits this thing, who's maintaining it. We went into, after talking to the city attorney, into originally a lease, and then later on decided that a license agreement was the best avenue for this to go forward. So working with city attorney, we draft a license agreement, putting in wording that allowed for the districts to participate. So I draft the original language. I sent it over to both the Old Town and Downtown districts on, I think it was around March 9th, and received comment back that they wanted to have input. Some of the input I received, I did modify the original language to reflect. Some of the information that was provided was that they wanted to be able to regulate content. Really concerned, especially in talking to the city attorney, about the city regulating any type of content on there, other than just providing advice to our tenant, which is the chamber, for their use of their billboard. So that was what was drafted and put forward. The chamber has had a chance to review this. They made some slight modifications to suit their needs. The city did add some provisions in there because there was at least mention by a council member about what the benefit would be to the city. And knowing that, we partner with the chamber on many levels, including their building and so forth, because they are I believe, a nonprofit, and trying to get them to have the resources to be able to promote the city, not financially harm them. So they agreed to provide us with the use of the billboard for 4 weeks, which is what the Economic Development Committee has started using for holiday advertising. The cost to us would then just be for the banner materials and so forth. So basically 50% of the total rental costs. So today we have this matter. I know that Jackie from the chamber's there, and so she can probably answer some of the questions about this. This concludes my staff report at this moment.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. We appreciate your remote report today. Are there any questions, staff at this council? All right, seeing no questions. Is there any public comment on this item, Madam Clerk?
There is no public comment.
Okay, no public comment, and I'll open this for public comment. Seeing,
The chamber CEO is here at the podium available for any questions.
okay. Jackie, do you want to say anything under public comment? Or are you happy just to be there to answer any questions at staff? Okay. Council, do you have any questions for Miss Jackie?
I just wanted a quick question. If that's okay, Madam Mayor.
Yes, please.
Just a point of clarification. So we own the property, but the billboard was built by the chamber and is owned by the chamber.
Mhm.
Okay, just wanted to verify because there were questions about that earlier. Okay, that's all I had.
I'll have a question for you, since you're there.
Yes, go ahead.
Ladies first, Daniel.
In,
That's
It
really
says
loud.
in the part of the consideration, it looks like priority. It says in the event of a conflicting time request, licensee should give a priority as follows. Pre-booked events will be first. So what are some of those? Can you just say?
So some of our big economic drivers. So we have the Mandarin Festival, we have the fair, the rodeo, the ones that have been advertising on the billboard probably since before any of us were paying attention.
Okay, good. And then the city would be next, and then the business districts next, and then nonprofit. Okay. Okay, and that's the only question I have.
Councilman Berland, did you have a question?
She asked the exact question I was going to ask. So I just wanted to point out the pecking order of how it can be requested, because I know there's been discussions during my time of being the liaison for one of the business districts of how does that work. I have some comments, but that answered the question. So thank you.
And I will say that every year I've gone to the business districts and offered up before I book the billboard, because it does book up, and I try to get it as far in advance as I can because it is fairly time consuming. And I don't get much response. So I do offer it up to because the business districts are a big part of the city, and I understand that. So they've always come first when we start working on the billboard.
And it does book up, like in December when you ask for input.
It doesn't book up completely, but I mean, the main events take up
Yeah.
most of it, most of the big chunks. And they've been doing it forever. It's mostly the winter months that are fairly empty. And then we have to end up filling them up with
Whatever.
items that aren't as desirable.
Mhm.
Well, I'm glad to see that we have a contract. It only took us 20 years. But the good news is we have one before us, and I appreciate the work on this effort. And I have no questions. I'm supportive of the document. Is there any public, we already asked for public comment, but we'll ask for it again now that Jackie had an opportunity to speak. Any public comment? Seeing none, council.
I have one more quick question too, when you're done.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Just so I'm clear, so as people ask me. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, calendar year, I don't know what we operate on.
We're a calendar year.
Your calendar year. So at the beginning of the calendar year, you are pretty much a blank slate except for those key events that are
Ish.
kind of marked
So-
off ahead of time, and then you give that priority based on those 2 or 3 events that are already marked off.
The big events that are economic drivers, we
Mhm.
give first right of refusal. So usually around September, October,
Okay,
we go to them and ask them if their dates are the same,
got
if
it,
they want to sign a contract again for the next year.
got it.
They obviously have to pay a deposit at that time, sign the contract. Nothing is set in stone until contract is paid and the deposit's paid.
But if somebody randomly decided to do something at a random time last year, they don't get their same month the next year just because they did it last year. Not an economic driver, just a random business that's
Correct.
using it. They don't get.
So
the
businesses have
upfront
never
payment.
used it in the past.
A church event or something like that.
My goal would be to fill it all up completely with events because those are what drive people to our region.
Yep.
But unfortunately, there's not enough events that can afford a billboard. And I will say it, talking with other nonprofits, that it is very affordable, but it's still expensive
Okay.
for marketing. But compared to the 7,000 6-month commitment of the other billboards, ours is pretty inexpensive. So
People have asked,
Totally.
so it's good to clarify that.
yeah, and like I said, my goal would be to completely fill it up with events that bring people to town.
Okay.
Just unfortunately, there's not enough of them.
Maybe there will be some.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to fill
Maybe
the little
maybe
gap.
we can start marketing to the endurance events. We have a lot of those, right?
They just have to have the money.
Hmm.
That's the problem, the marketing budget.
I understand. All right, council, are there any final questions or comments on this item?
I have comments, but no more questions.
All right, why don't we go ahead and just, if you have comments, Councilman Berlin, did you say you had a comment? And then Councilman Riddell Harris will go to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Like you, I haven't been on for decades, but I know that we've been talking about this several city managers now. And for reasons why I can't understand why this such a small thing has not been able to get to the finish line. Understanding and appreciate our legal counsel switching from a MOU to another type of agreement. And I appreciate that we've really solidified the process in here for our business improvement districts because they do have events and they do have obviously a vested interest, especially in such a key spot, pulling people off the freeway. And so since I've asked for it from you, I really appreciate the communication that you have pushed out to DBA and OTBA trying to solicit. And I am not to put any of the business district presidents on the spot here today, but I hope that they continue to make sure that early on to get that information back to you so that if there are important events within that district, that they are getting the first right of refusal for use of the billboard. But no, I think it's nice just to have it in writing. And I know there's been some discussion of who should control it. And, I just don't think that we want to get into the business of the city managing it. We also don't necessarily want it to be managed by committee. That too puts us at a little bit of risk of free speech and playing favorites. And so I think really having a solid methodology here and asking the chamber, who again spends the money and keeps it maintained, makes a lot of sense. But again, I would just ask you just to do what you're doing, keep working with the business districts to make sure that their events are prioritized. But no,
Absolutely.
very supportive of the language, that's how it's been written.
Mhm. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Thank you. I too I'm pleased with how this has gotten done. Thank you so much, Jonathan. I know when I started working with you in economic development, when you first got here, I bugged you about it and you're like, I'll get to it, I promise. I've only got a gazillion other things going on ahead of it. So I appreciate you having the time to get around to it. I know it's just it's a small thing, but it's just, I think it'll help make things run smoother, that it's kind of line itemed out and everyone's really clear. The only thing I would like to do as an amendment to this is the city is not so great at remembering timeframes. And so the automatic renewal of every 5 years, I just would like to take out the automatic part of that. So that way it just has to come back. It can go on the consent calendar. I just know that we tend to go, oh yeah, we should know about that. And it already happened 3 days ago and then we forget about it. So just because we just aren't as on top of dates as we'd like to be, just in case in 5 years we want to make sure things are going the way that we plan them to go, or if there's any tweaks that need to get made. Just, I think a renewal every 5 years that just comes back to council and gets on the consent calendar would be great.
Just like our building lease.
And Madam Mayor, I have something.
Yes, I can't, I'm not able to see that you are, but yes, Councilwoman Amara, please, your
Thank you.
comments.
So yeah, my take on this is pretty similar to the other council members. Jackie, I think you've been doing a good job. It's a hard job. It's a very difficult job trying to organize and get this thing up, and people change their minds and dates and things come up. And so, you know, I certainly understand it's very difficult. And I would be asking the same thing as Councilman Berlant, if you could really work real closely with the business districts and the endurance committees and try and, you know, have an understanding that things do come up. Hopefully, you know, the business districts will have some understanding that, you know, this is we're working together. We're all in this together and we have the same goal. So thank you for that. And I do think it's prudent to look every 5 years at contracts. So I think an automatic renewal is something that I wouldn't favor, but looking at it again in 5 years would be very good. I won't be here probably, but
I might not either.
Okay, thank you very much. And I already stated my comments and that I'm very supportive of this. And I'm happy to see it finally come before us. So thank you so very much to staff and to Jackie for working this out. And it'll be great to have an established policy and procedure in place so that there aren't any further questions. So what I'm hearing that there is support to adopt the document, actually to authorize the signing of the document with an amendment to have it renewed, actually up for renewal in 5 years. Is that correct, council? Is there any objection to that? If there is not, I would ask that
Gary,
someone.
you have something to say, Alice.
I'm sorry, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and council members. I actually have language to accomplish that, so it's in front of you for your approval. It would be to paragraph 3, the first sentence after 2023, and may be renewed for additional 5-year terms thereafter by mutual agreement of the parties in writing prior to the end of the then current term.
Okay, are we fine with that, council? Is there any objection?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the license and indemnity agreement between the city of Auburn and the Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce with the billboard with the suggested edit by our legal counsel.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Council, any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that the motion has been adopted on a unanimous vote. Our next item on the agenda is agenda item number 10. It's the homeless update. And I understand we have our police chief here, and thank you very much for giving us your report.
Well, good evening, everybody. Ryan Canan, Chief of Police, here for the city of Auburn. So good evening, Madam Mayor and city council members. So at the end of last city council meeting, I gave a quick update based on the staff report, given the timeliness of it. So for everybody's knowledge, in mid-February this year, the temporary shelter was kind of open and reimagined up at the DeWitt Center in the county jurisdiction of unincorporated Auburn. And with those, when the tents went away and the new tents came, not everybody made a smooth transition from the old shelter to the new shelter. And, conversations with the chief probation officer there and his staff, they were on that fairly quickly. There are rules and regulations that the new temporary shelter has. One of the things that they ran into was not everybody necessarily agreed to those new rules and regulations. And some of those people, as a result of that, moved on. They moved to different areas, and there was some dispersion. And the city of Auburn, we did see some of that impact during that time frame. During roughly about a month, we saw an increase of about 19 individuals that we came in contact with. There obviously may have been more, but for the most part, it was about 19 when we were tracking. Many of those were coming from the DeWitt Center and the new shelter, the old shelter. And as soon as we saw that, we did see an influx of calls for service. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but there were some pretty significant ones. As I noted in the staff report, in one day, we had 3 calls of 2 individuals trying to establish a camp on E.V. Kane's property. So obviously, those types of things are very important to us, and we want to get to those things quickly, and we were able to do that. Other ones, we did have individuals going around causing public nuisances, and we actually made an arrest on that. And so we were quick to respond to that. We did change gears. We talked about as our police department, being able to be flexible and be nimble. As soon as we noted this increase, our impact team, our POP team changed gears, and we started going back out there more so with a focus on our homelessness and our efforts there. And as you can see, really contemporary, in our Facebook social media posts, the efforts that our staff is doing to help get those folks there. We did also, again, reach out to probation and Health and Human Services, and we were able to get them, again, partnered with us, and really with a focus of getting people back to the temporary shelter. And again, in my conversation with the chief probation officer, they did see that. They saw a number of folks who came back and then moved into the shelter. In the last report I got, the shelter is about 88% full, which leaves about 6/10 available for individuals that need to be or want to be moved up there. So this will be, again, something we continue to monitor. For us, obviously, goal was to reduce the numbers back to where we've seen, where most of those people actually have some ties to the city of Auburn. When they did the point in time count this year, I noted in the staff report, it was actually the first year that the numbers of the point in time count were very similar to the numbers that we have internally believed our homelessness numbers to be. And that was around 26. Where historically last year, I believe we saw almost a single digit number of homeless in the point in time count, but we knew that our numbers were higher than that and about the mid-20s. So that's good news. We're actually, the fact is, we're kind of on the same page, and we're working together to get people the services they need. So that'll be the end of the report, and I'll take any questions.
Oh, Alice, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying not to mute myself. Thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate your report. Council members, are there any questions or comments for the chief at this time? It looks like Councilman Berlant.
Yeah, I'll defer to Councilwoman Amar since I keep beating her to it.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
You might ask the questions for me.
Okay. So my question is, were you able to get a read or solicit from the individuals, the 19 that you said? Are they from the Auburn area, or are they from Roseville or other parts?
So I do know that some of them came from outside the area. And one of the focuses of the tent shelter itself, or the mobile temporary shelter, is not to necessarily allow people from outside the region to get into those services. So again, based on the conversation I had with the chief probation officer, they did have some of those individuals come up and were turned away from the mobile temporary shelter, and then again had to go find services elsewhere.
Now, my understanding is that they will allow people in the county, though, at the shelter. Is that right?
So their focus is not to necessarily outside the region. They will provide services with essentially the goal of getting those individuals back to wherever they came from. So whether it's Nevada County, Sacramento County, but their goal is not to necessarily house those individuals here and save the resources for Placer County residents.
Right, Placer County, yes. Okay, so some of the South County individuals are up here, though.
Again, I know that some of them moved around looking for shelters. I know that some came from elsewhere. We also have the train station that drops individuals off right here in the city of Auburn. And when we come in contact with those individuals, we do tell them, hey, services are whether back in Sacramento County for you through your Health and Human Services there, or we will point them in the direction of Health and Human Services here in the county, because again, they are the experts in services and can help these people get to where they need to go.
Good. Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
And did I hear you say there were 88% full in the shelter or in the tent area?
In the mobile temporary shelter, which is the new
Yep.
tent area.
Okay. And is it 100% full? Or do you know?
Their goal is to actually reserve some tents and leave those available in case, like, again, law enforcement or someone needs to get somebody housed, and we can use that as a resource. Again, a lot of focus is on this Martin versus Boise decision and allowing the fact that we know that there are shelters available and beds available, that therefore we can do some type of enforcement action if necessary for camping.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Amara. Councilman Berlant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief, for your report. I know we got to have a little teaser the other night. A couple questions. You talked about the work with the 19 and the work you were able to do with probation. The 19 or even what we are currently experiencing today, this week, this month, do you attribute any of the transients to sleeping in the temporary no barrier shelter, but coming here during the daytime? Or were those 19 and again what is currently here right now, are they just for lack of a better word, transients that are looking, or homeless that are looking for help? I guess what I'm trying to differentiate is, are these people staying in the shelter and then coming here during the daytime? Are you seeing that?
So I couldn't answer that like very specifically, but I can tell you that a number of those individuals that came to us were new to us. So they weren't our homeless that, essentially live here in the city of Auburn, but they were newcomers to us. And during those contacts, within a very short period of time, we actually weren't contacting them again. So the belief is, yes, some of them might come from the temporary shelter looking for opportunities to panhandle, find, maybe resources here in the city, only to go back to the mobile temporary shelter. They absolutely could be doing that. In some respects, it seemed that way at first, but in those, like I said, a number of those individuals we're not seeing it. We haven't seen again during that same time frame.
Okay. Thank you for that. You talked about the work the POP team or the impact team is doing. What's the status of the CAT team, and has that responsibility fully rolled into the impact team? And if so, and I realize a multi-pronged question now, and if so, how much time so far or projected in the future do you believe the impact team will be focused on transient and homeless related issues?
So we love our acronyms, and so we start off with CAT with the creation of really this impact model, which is our crime and traffic reduction model. The responsibilities towards homeless fell under that model. And now we have the POP team. As we're building that team, those responsibilities will go to the POP team, kind of for more global responses and more partnerships. But where we're really coming into, we spent 3 years in that strategic plan with a large focus on homelessness in the city. And the goal from there during that 3 years was we identified what our problem was and what issues we were having, with the goal of getting that number down to something that was manageable. And, even being here today, I didn't think we needed necessarily a full-time clinician then. I believe we needed a part-time one then. And now where we've gotten our numbers to is a manageable, position. We have one of our CSOs, Kathy Williamson, who actually retired from Health and Human Services, and kind of that I've talked to her about it before, kind of the unicorn when it comes to bringing in someone who's so knowledgeable about local resources and homelessness. And now we've got this number down to the mid-20s. And with that, homelessness isn't our only concern here in the city of Auburn. We're always changing gears. We're always, looking into the future to find what our next problem is going to be within the city, whether it's traffic or property crimes or those types of things. And now, like I said, we've been able to roll our homeless efforts into our impact model, but with Kathy on board, we can do that a couple times a day, or a couple times a week rather.
Thank you. any discussion with probation on what their next steps are for the low barrier shelter? And as far as when they were here at Medlars, you heard their vision of having them be more regionalized versus everybody within the county coming to the Auburn area. Any further discussion on what that might look like for South Placer or for the Tahoe, Truckee, or the Colfax area to have smaller but capacity regionally for a similar model?
I think those discussions are still happening with elected officials and cities to find out what this next model looks like for a mobile temporary shelter. At the same time, I believe that the probation office is waiting to finally get into contract with services that will manage the two different shelters. And so I think once that's done, regulations, rules, and everybody will probably have a better handle on what's happening within these mobile temporary shelters to probably give elected officials and city leadership in other cities a better snapshot of what they can anticipate.
Yeah, because obviously my line of questioning is to try to understand, the big change and the increased service that's being provided for these individuals in need. Is this, low barrier, no barrier temporary shelter? They're not prisoners. They can go wherever they want during the daytime. So I'm just trying to understand, though, our transient residents from South Placer coming here so they can sleep, but then they don't have cars, so they are walking, and the closest area is the city of Auburn. And so what increased, concerns and issues do we have with the current model? And again, when I say issues, I'm not talking about panhandling. I'm not talking about sleeping, I'm talking about aggressive panhandling. I'm talking about property crimes, all these other items that obviously we have seen a spike in the recent years, and even more recently with the low barrier, which I'm very, very supportive of, so that we do have housing, right? Or, a place for these residents to sleep, but just trying to understand again, what's their long-term vision here, and how do we make sure it's not all on the backs of Auburn? So thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a quick comment. Do you want me to hold it until the end, or since it's informational only, can I just continue?
Go ahead and just continue since it is just an informational.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, no, I appreciate the work you do. I mean, this was literally your first assignment when you came to the city, and you really have done a significant amount of work to not only ensure that these individuals are provided the services that they need, that we are constantly out there reminding them over and over and over, but also holding all of us accountable to the same rules and ordinances and state laws. And so that's really important. I just really appreciate your continued advocacy and partnership with probation to make sure that the decisions that occur at the DeWitt Center do have an impact on the city of Auburn. And so whenever work is done for sheltering in Auburn, it does impact the city of Auburn as well. And so obviously Councilwoman Amara and I sit on the regional task force with our regional partners, and they are very much dead set against having anything outside of the Auburn area. But I think a continued push that we need to have is we need to take care of our Auburn residents who need a place to sleep, who need the services to get back on their feet, who need transitional housing, who need all the other mental health, behavioral health services. But we shouldn't be the residents of Roseville, Rockland, Lincoln, who don't have housing and who need these services. That shouldn't be on the back of us to do. And so I continue to be an advocate for the regionalization of not just sheltering, but providing the services that have to go along with sheltering. So thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. And I appreciate your comments. I just want to say that I echo those. I echo them. So thank you very much. Councilwoman Riddell Harris, did you have any questions or comments?
Yes, just a quick one or two. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Along with what Councilman Berlant was saying, it doesn't seem like we got a lot of notice having to do with the tent facility, and it didn't seem that there was as much collaboration as there maybe could have been for us to prepare for when I took the tour of the new tent facilities, it was nice, but even walking around there, I could see there's going to be folks that lived in the previous tent area that weren't going to want to transition here, and where do they all go? And it seems like that should have been a conversation with us ahead of time, since we're the neighbors. Is there been any effort to kind of increase that communication and working together and planning a little bit more?
There has, yes. Conversation with Chief Probation Officer and the manager that oversees this program. We're now in more constant contacts and communication. And we've tied him into with Lieutenant Morrison, Lieutenant Huey, but also Sergeant Neary, who is our pop sergeant.
Okay,
So we are certainly working through those communication pieces.
that's good to hear.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that's my only question. I think you're doing great work. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that we don't seem to have as much of a homeless issue. I feel bad for some of the residents I talk to in North Auburn that talk about how they just don't feel comfortable walking around or going into stores and things like that. So I'm grateful that you're here in our community protecting us and making sure that we feel safe to be able to do those things. I do think it's unfortunate that North Auburn has had to bear the brunt of most of this. And I'm hoping that regional opportunity gets to happen, so that way we can share that load with other communities as well. But I really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I hope that regional working group that you guys are on hands out something, so that way we can help to figure out a solution to this problem. But I'm not overly optimistic. So thank you so much for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman Amara.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to thank you too. I was just asking you questions, but I appreciate your approach and what you've done. And I also appreciate your support in focusing on the homeless in this area, and in understanding that this has to be tackled by all the areas in the county, not just Auburn. I think that's been something that this council has been working toward, is really trying to promote that there be other facilities, because we are getting folks who are from down the hill, and it's just not fair for Auburn to have to take the brunt of this. And as Councilman Berlant said, from that, there's ramifications of things that occur, and it makes your job more difficult. But not just that, it's just, we have to take care of folks, and we can't just send them here and there. It's important that we all work together and have this regional approach. And I think there's some opportunity, and I'm hoping that at the task force that they will, I attended the one previous to this last one, and it did not seem like they were at all interested in having any type of shelter in other than Auburn. But I'm hoping that maybe with this shelter that opened up, and I think the low barrier and working together with police enforcement, health and human services, that we can really show that, this can make an impact as far as everybody in the county. And anyway, so I want to thank you for your support in that cause and direction that we're trying to take here at the City Council. So
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Amara. I appreciate that. And Chief, yes, I just wanted to echo the comments that we do appreciate all the hard work that you're putting towards this and keeping us apprised of the situation as well. But I know that this is just an ongoing effort, and we do really appreciate all your work. I will say that just having some conversations, some informal conversations with our colleagues here in the region, other council members that are present on this trip here, they do recognize the impact of this particular solution to the city of Auburn. And they also, I will say that a couple that I spoke with, they recognize the impact, and they don't think that it's fair that we should be fronting any pushback, or not pushback, but any brushback, I guess, just as a result of that shelter, and that they also need to come up with some solutions. I know that Councilman Berlant, you and Councilwoman Amara are on the regional task force. And so, there are discussions going on there. And I think there's some, there is some with regards to the Gatherings Project, which this council took a support position on by the others. But I do think that they recognize that if they're not willing to go forward with a regional one solution, that they do recognize they need to do something individually. So I guess time will tell as we move forward. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Chief, for all of your efforts, and thank you for continuing to keep us apprised on this and ensuring that we can do all we can do to keep our residents and our businesses safe. So thank you very much. All right, that was just an informational item. I will open it up for any public comment. Is there any public comment? Madam Clerk, any public comment online?
There is no public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, with that said, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. This is item number 11. Chief, you're up again. This is the Police Department's year-end report. And I'm hoping, since I have not been in town, that you will furnish us with a color copy of this report. We just got a copy. I got a black and white, but I like to get that color with all the charts and so forth. So hoping that's in my box, but go ahead and take it away, Chief.
Well, again, good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Ryan Canan, your Chief of Police, and I will do my best to get you a colored copy in everybody's box. So again, thank you for the comments from the last presentation. Although you're thanking me, it's our staff that's really doing all of the work out there. I'm very proud of what this police department has accomplished in 2022 and beyond. I've been here as a chief for 4.5 years, and again, I'm just extremely proud of what our team has been able to do in 4.5 years, and even last year in 2022. Oh, you make it closer? Nope. Work the room? No, doesn't work. There we go. All right. So we'll go through this. There's 28 slides. Again, a couple of years ago, we changed our core values to be professionalism, respectful, ownership, integrity, and empathy. And I can assure you that day in and day out, your police department is living up to these core values. Retirements, people, I think it's important to highlight what our folks are doing. You can see there, Jennifer Solomon, code enforcement officer, but so many other things. Over 28 years of service to the city of Auburn. Stan Hamlin, 27 years of law enforcement service to the city of Auburn. It's a long time, especially a long time being in one place. Promotions, appointments. You might notice Connor Johnson on the far left. So Connor started with us as a CSO, and we promoted him to officer when he put himself through all 3 of the modules. So he put a lot of work in off time to make himself successful. Aaron Berthelsen and Sarah Roach are both selected as our school resource officers at Placer High, E.B. Kane, Sky Ridge, and Alta Vista. Again, just recognizing some of the awards. We have Sergeant Almeida, 15 years of service. You can see there a number of life-saving awards for everybody. One example, life-saving award, was one of our dispatchers, Josephine Hodges, was actually listening to the countywide radio. And when she heard the radio, actually fire was being dispatched to a individual who was overdosing. It wasn't coming through our dispatch, but she heard it and then immediately dispatched our officers, who showed up there just before medical aid could get there and started providing Narcan to the individual who was overdosing in the bathroom. Then fire got there and medical services got there and provided more Narcan. But ultimately, based on her actions of going over and beyond just listening to the radio, we were able to save a life. And then you can see there, volunteer Sandy O'Blennis. We rely heavily on our volunteers, and she did a tremendous job for this last year, helping out in a number of different programs. One specifically was our Back to Zero, our campaign, our tobacco ordinance. So there's some of our awards and recognitions. One of them that's not on there is the MAD Award. We had officers arrest over 25 DUIs in 1 year. And when you do that for an agency, you get recognized by MAD. Dispatch of the Year, Jasmine Zavala, and our Employee of the Year detective, who was actually our Trident detective, Ian Acker there. Ian has since retired on industrial retirement. He was injured on the job, and as such, just finally retired this year. So these two, again, hardworking people. Jasmine is behind the scenes. Nobody ever really sees her, but I can tell you she is dedicated to this organization and this community. So we started our own 3-year strategic plan within the PD. We're actually on our 2nd iteration of it. So this is the beginning of our 3-year strategic plan. Our first focus was the Auburn Police Department team. And you can see there in the kind of the highlighted sworn full-time employees. We're at 24 currently. We have one vacancy. That vacancy is actually going to be filled within the next few weeks. We just sent out a job offer letter to somebody, and have been approved for that 25th body come July 1, and that person is already in backgrounds for us and will be filled right there in the beginning of July. Professional staff, which includes our dispatchers, our CSOs. You can see there are allotted 11. Currently, we have 2 vacancies, specifically as our code enforcement officer, the one that we promote when Jennifer retired. We're finally getting around to that process. We have 4 people that were interviewed, and we should be making a selection soon. And our CSO. So we promoted our CSO, our community service officer. Jacob Robertson was promoted to police officer. So that left that vacancy. And we did some cleanup on the classification and the job description, and we're opening that one up as well. Part-time employees, we have 3 reserves currently, 1 level 1, 1 level 2, and 1 level 3. And we're going through that process right now. We actually have 4 reserve officers in backgrounds right now. And then professional staff. So our part-time side of it, 2 CSOs, 1 record technician. That's what we have, 3. I've talked about Elijah Keim and Kathy Williamson. And then we also have our records technician as a part of our team. So here they are. And you can see Jamie Rosito Doyle in the bottom right corner. She's our current part-time records clerk. But these are all the folks that we brought on last year. So we added 10 new folks to the team in different capacities. And some of them have already changed. Specifically Jacob Robertson. Train for success, you can see there, internal training hours was 1,388 hours of training internally. And you can see the kind of the gold shield there for Lexipol Connect 2022. So Lexipol is our policies and procedures manual. They do quarterly reports, and we've earned gold for 2022 from them, which is completing 97% of policy and our daily training bulletins. So we're maintaining our gold standard there. Reaching the community, your police officers, dispatchers, community service officers, volunteers, we do a lot of events throughout the year, whether it's, reading week or being in a dunk tank or Special Olympics, shop with a cop, coffee with a cop. I could go on and on and on. And here's our Facebook, our social media. You can see there, Facebook followers reached at 16,000. We're actually at 17,000 now, an increase of 12%. Instagram has increased as well. We haven't used Twitter as much as we should be. And then Nextdoor continues to grow. You'll notice there in the bottom, foot patrols. So we started tracking that time from July to December. We have 260 hours of foot patrol time throughout the city during the last half of the year. Employee investment. We talk about this as, the job itself is not normal. What our cops and our dispatchers and our CSOs are going through is not normal. We have to do a better job. We have to prioritize taking care of them. And one of those things is actually tracking their fit time. So you can see there, 913 hours of fit time on duty, as well as the officers and staff talks to a licensed clinician at least once a year, and more if they need to. We're going through a process with human resources to find a new EAP, since our last one we found out will be closing shop at the end of this fiscal year. And then as well as all those other things. We're currently working with the community on what is called the R3 community. It's a nonprofit program that will help generate funds to offset some costs for the staff so they can go to different modalities, whether it's a financial, a mental health, a physical health, and all those types of things. So we can make sure they're healthy. I can tell you that, cops don't get in this job overweight and fat, but for some reason that happens towards the end of our career and it's not healthy. What's that? It is the donuts. I really like the sprinkle ones, and apple fritters at 2:00 in the morning are the best. I promise. And so we say that because, again, many people will talk about PERS retirements. The cops, our average is about 6 years into retirement is when we have some type of health issue. So I believe that being, the case, we got to do our part. And this is one of the ways that we do our part here for, your police officers, dispatchers, and staff. Advanced technology. We have knocked it out of the park with technology. Things like our cars. We have, the screen on the bottom left corner there is called First Arrival. It's a way that we communicate with staff so everybody knows what's going on. They can see these monitors in the hallway and briefing. All of our camera systems, we have our flock cameras, which are our new LPRs going up. We've got the side-by-side. Appreciate the support for things like our MRAP, all those different things, our drones. I mean, we've just really moved it out to the point where I can't actually remember all the technology and all the different programs that we've implemented here. I actually had to have staff write it all down during our team building workshop exercise. So it's a lot, and we should be proud of what they're getting accomplished. 2022, our impact, DUI arrests. We ended the year with 120 DUI arrests. As you can kind of see there, our focus wasn't just arresting people. We can't arrest our way out of this. So it is partnering with MAD, partnering with ABC, local businesses to try to reduce that number. I can tell you, one of the messages that I got from staff one day was, if you're looking at what things used to be like, so when you left certain bars at 2:30 in the morning, you drive through the parking lot would be empty. Now, when you're driving through the same parking lot is full of cars still. So then people were driving home, obviously drunk, right? Now they're parking their cars, they're finding new ways home, certainly in partnership with our public works crew and the transit program. That's been huge. We have one taxi cab driver that drives through town. One night he had 7 people asking him for a ride. That's how we're changing these things. I know we see a lot of DUI arrests. I believe the Auburn Journal just did an article. 12 out of 18 arrests were DUI related. And you can see there, the second paragraph, we're not talking about people who just had a beer. We're not talking about people who are at a 0.08 or talking about our average blood alcohol content was 0.18. It's twice the legal limit. And you can see there, 2 of our officers, Sergeant Davis and Officer Bandillo, be getting the 23152 DUI pin. And you see that award right there, that picture, that MAD Champion Award, Outstanding Agency. That was the inaugural award to us from MAD. It's the first one that was given out for all the efforts and all the hard work that our staff is doing. And I said, not just on the streets, but working with bartenders. I know you've seen on our social media, some people might not like us playing foosball at a bar and doing those things. The 5 minutes, 10 minutes that we can spend in a bar, keep people from driving drunk, is time well spent. Crime stats, or UCR, so uniform crime reporting. Used to hear me talk about what they call summary-based reporting, but now it's called NIBRS, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. California changed theirs as well to the California Incident-Based Reporting System. So many things are the same, but the way they track stuff is now tracking all of the crimes related to an incident or some of the crimes, as opposed to a hierarchy. So if multiple part 1 crimes, so say the robbery and a vehicle theft or arson, they would take a hierarchy and they would only count 1. Now they're taking all of these different crimes and tracking them all the same. So you can see we're actually, for us, crime is down in a lot of areas. Robbery, there's an uptick. Aggravated assaults, we had a decrease. Burglary is decreased. Larceny, which is just your typical thefts, went up. Vehicle theft down, and then you see a couple arsons there. So you can see part 1 crimes overall decreased by 45%. Aggravated assaults was our largest decrease by 58%, and overall violent crimes down 52%. And you can see there, the bottom one, we made 336 misdemeanor arrests, 155 felonies, for a total of 491 total arrests. Traffic data, traffic enforcement, obviously one of the larger issues here within the community. Definitely people see this the most, more complaints this way. And for us, we don't have a full-time traffic team. So it's the responsibility of all of our patrol officers and anybody else. We can do things on the streets, be creative. Citations are down, DUI arrests were up, but collisions were down. You can see there, kind of going through the bullet points. We increased our traffic stops by 12% to a total of 1,500 traffic stops. Didn't issue as many tickets. I'm a firm believer that issuing citations is to change people's behavior. And if someone can recognize that the error in their ways, then I think a warning is sufficient. DUI arrests, though, increased by 37%. And as you can see there, 21 of our 131 vehicle accidents were DUI related. So 16% of our crashes were as a result of DUIs. And our primary collision factor was speed. Investigations continues to work hard. So for those that don't know, we have 2 in-house detectives. We have also 2 detectives that are part of 2 different task forces. And within our investigations unit, we have our 2 SROs. They took 166 cases were investigated, 113 were closed by arrest or exceptional means or unfounded. You have the MDIC interviews, 17 of them, as noted, it's typically involving children. So child abuse. Well, we get SCARS, which is the suspected child abuse report. 59 of those, and those are mandated for us to investigate. And you can see there, property and evidence processed 2,992 items. 111 of those were firearms, and 99 of those roughly were from the gun buyback program that we did last year. Communications records, total calls, 32,000, as you see there, 5,900 were 911 related. 396 cases processed. I mentioned during dispatcher week, on average, the calls were answered within just under 8 seconds. And, you know, when you have Cal OES, commend your dispatchers for how quickly they're answering calls and how well they're doing. And with the note of, he hasn't seen these types of numbers in a long time. Kudos to our staff, especially considering the turnover that we've had, the vacancies we had, the extra time that they're all working on overtime. So I'm proud of them. Code enforcement responded to 71 cases, 2 admin sites were issued. Nothing further need to happen. We'll probably start seeing a difference once we get our code enforcement officer actually onboarded and everything else. I appreciate my partners' patience throughout the city on how we're handling code enforcement, you know, the routing and everything else. Animal control, 357 calls for service, 45 animals were taken to the shelter. And here, and then you can see some of the total intake from the shelter was 97. And there's the numbers there. Our POP team, we talk about the homelessness right here. 372 transient related calls were tracked last year, as well as 268 calls for service that were officer initiated. Volunteers, we did 1,000 live scan really reports last year. 975 pounds in drug take back. And here's our back to zero. So last year we issued 22 citations and we held 3 diversion classes where 12 students participated in these classes. And noted when I asked, didn't seem like we don't have a whole lot of repeat offenders, which is good. And then our goals, again, remain the same. We want to focus on really building an auxiliary team of reserve officers, dispatchers, youth, volunteers, tier training. We want to make sure we maintain our gold standards for performance and policy, identify more opportunities to connect and communicate with the community, and then accomplish our identified goals to fitness and employee wellness, including our checkups and partnerships. Here's a Q hit. Last March, we came to the city council to talk about this new community satisfaction survey program that we have. Like many of us, you go out to a restaurant, order food, you get a text message potentially that says, how do we do? That's what Q hit is for us. In 2022, so beginning about March through the rest of the year, we sent out 2,200 surveys, got almost 51% of them back. And you can see there, out of that, we have 87, if you round up, 88% satisfaction score within the community. Many people ask, how do I think we're doing as a police department in serving our community? Based on a survey and everything else, you know, we range anywhere between 100 to 70, mid 70s. The week of Christmas, the week before Christmas, we were at 68 or 78 rather. And then the week actually of Christmas, we were at a score of 100. So it's interesting when we watch how things change, but the community is telling us we're doing a pretty good job. We talk about here, report of concern, still do this on our website, camps, narcotic tips, vandalism, crime tips. And that is the end of the presentation.
All right, thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate that very much. I'd like to ask council, do you have any questions for the chief at this time?
I do.
Yes, Councilwoman Amara.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very, very thorough. I really appreciate that. And so I just have a couple of follow-up questions. Really appreciate the faces with the retirements and the promotions and the staff. I really, really appreciate that. I see these officers around working so hard, and I'm going to try and memorize it. But anyway, so we have right now 24 sworn police officers. Is that correct?
So we have That's how many positions we're allowed.
Okay.
One of those is actually vacant right now. And it will be filled within about less than a month.
Okay, but so then we'll be up to 24.
Then we'll be up to 24.
And that includes the new pop team.
So the 20, it does, the 3 positions that were approved this fiscal year. And then the 4th one is approved come July 1 of the next fiscal year.
Okay,
So
great. Thank you.
Yep.
Then. Oh, so your slide, when you indicate about the foot patrol, you said 260 hours. So is that just combined officers, their time? Because that would be 6 weeks
it's
Yeah.
it's collectively.
collectively.
So it's all the officers typically when they're on patrol, includes my hours. I will get on the CAD system and track my foot patrol time, lieutenants. So there's kind of one, because we want to show exactly how much time that we're spending out there on foot patrol, but it's a priority for us and we want to track and recognize those officers that are meeting that accomplishment.
Good. I appreciate that. I like that priority. And is there a priority in terms of where and hours for the foot patrol?
It depends what teams are available, but we really want to get everybody downtown, Old Town, be seen. Also, we've hit up the skate park. We've hit up the bike park. We've hit up the various parks that we go to, schools, all those different things.
Great,
Hmm.
great. Thank you. I like hearing that. And then, the fit time, that was interesting. 900 hours, that's collectively as well.
Yes.
Okay. And they're able to do that during their hours? Do they have set times?
I don't have set times whenever they can make it work. I leave that up to the supervisors to figure out when they can get into the gym and get their fit time done.
Great. And I understand you have a very nice gym.
We have an awesome gym.
Good, great. I'll have to go check it out.
I was just going to say that, Councilwoman Amara. I bet you're going to want to go in there and check it out with the officers.
The mayor and I will be in there.
That's right.
So, okay. And then with regard to DUI arrest, are there any, it just sounds like you're doing a great job and I'm happy to hear that there's cars parked there and I'm happy to hear that our transit is being utilized. Do we have any other incentives? Like, do we have any free passes or any type of tokens to help people get places, or do we do any?
So we don't, I mean, we have talked to the various business owners, the restaurants, bars, and all those things to find those ideas. I actually know that a lot of the business owners actually have their own like accounts to kind of for the transit, whether it's Lyft, Uber, those types of things. They do actually have their own account. I don't know if we set that up with them here or not, but there's a lot of alternatives that we're trying to, and outreach that we do. I mean, I can tell you the transit program put together little flyers for the bars. We've done drink coasters that have the QR code on there. We're really trying to and pushing it a lot so people use these services.
Fantastic. I like seeing that as a priority. Thank you for that. And with, I had another question. So, but anyway, okay. So, the other question is, is there any type of opportunities to create an awareness of individuals? Like, do you ever have breathalyzers there so people can participate in breathalyzers to see that they shouldn't jump in their car?
So we have historically done that and brought the breathalyzers, the PAS devices into different establishments so that we can do exactly that. Kind of show somebody who thinks that they can, hey, I'm feeling fine type deal, to show them, hey, this is what your blood alcohol level is right now. And we're also cognizant of how business owners feel about that. Not every business owner wants us to come in and do a bar check at their place. Definitely not every business wants us to walk in with a PAS device and start, breathalyzing all their customers. So it is a fine line. And I can tell you, I think we have a really good relationship with our business community, and we're able to have those conversations and have those discussions and look at both sides of that.
Good, because I'm sure, you certainly can be outside the establishment and do your job. So that's good. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now on to traffic stops. Do you happen to know where the majority of the, not traffic stops, collisions are?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I can tell you anecdotally, it's Highway 49.
I would think so.
That's where we get most of our crashes. It's typically what I see in our watch summary on a daily basis.
can you recall how many, or if there's any on Auburn Folsom?
I can tell you, I'm sure there are crashes on Auburn Folsom, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, so that doesn't stick out to you necessarily. Okay. And you said they were reduced. Why is that?
Why are collisions reduced?
Yes.
Could be any number of reasons. We do spend a lot of time on Highway 49, and just by being there, whether it's our car that's parked on the side of the road, the signage that says slow down, even our social media posts that tell people, hey, we're working traffic in this area. You typically get people to slow down, and the fact that speed is our highest primary collision factor, probably having some success with that.
Right.
And for us,
You have identified that area then as being a pretty major area for collisions. Then.
yes.
And so you're focused on that. Okay, thank you. And you indicated that 166 cases were investigated, and you said you closed either by arrest means or unfounded 113. What happened to the other, 50 cases?
So it could still be open.
Okay.
Yeah, still ongoing investigations.
Okay.
But out of the 113 that were closed by arrest, exceptional means, or unfounded.
Okay. I see. Okay. And then you indicated that 111 firearms were probably from the gun turn-in program.
Yeah, at least 99 of them. Yes.
Oh, 99. Okay. And were the 2992 items, are some of those drugs or
Could be a
paraphernalia?
wide variety of stuff. Could be safekeeping type items. So we get something from somebody, or lost and found, drug items, all those different things come in. That's part of the 2,900.
There's not, and nothing sticks in your mind as a majority of drug paraphernalia or anything?
No, not top of my head.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sure.
I'm just kind of interested in this. And then, the POP team. I really think the POP team is doing a very good job. Sounds like they're working very hard with the homeless. Do they also have other places that they're focused on, or is it just primarily the homeless right now?
Sergeant Neary is right now kind of a one-man show, but he's been to the various business association meetings and doing the outreach, the special events. He's been doing quite a bit in his role as the POP sergeant.
Now, have they been able to go down to the School Park Preserve and kind of maybe facilitate some dialogue down there with individuals?
So they have. Sergeant Neary and the patrol teams go down there on kind of a regular basis. I get it. The loud music at times. We've smelled the odor of marijuana coming from the park as well. And I believe most recently we've had Fight Club going on in the School Park Preserve. The kids are trying to be as safe as they can. They brought their own gloves, but it's not something we want to encourage down there. So if somebody knows anybody that owns a boxing club, please reach out, and we'd like to connect some kids with you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that plug.
Sure.
That was very good. And then missed the.
And we are getting the 3 cameras at School Park Preserve.
Yeah.
Will help as well. They'll be tied into the police department, some monitors there.
And so then with the cameras, are they sophisticated enough to be able to actually identify individuals, or is that just a deterrent?
I think we have some good technology coming in, and with the technology, we'll be able to do that as we're able to.
Okay.
A lot of it is just to kind of let us know that things are happening down there, and for us to be able to respond to that when we have time.
And will they be protected? I mean, from vandalism?
Yes.
Okay. I guess they're sophisticated.
And hopefully, when we see that happening, kids spray paint the glass, and we can get there in time to stop it.
Good.
At least we'll get their picture, and we can.
There you go. That was.
Okay. So, and then lastly, the goals. I think those are all in internal goals, looks like. So I'm sure you have reducing crime and working with the homeless and all that as goals too, but those just aren't listed here.
They're not listed. I think for me, those things are just natural goals and I don't have to really talk about those efforts. And for us, they change all the time. Our strategic plan really has an emphasis on, tying it all back together. We have the right staff and we have the adequate staff. We can address most, if not all, problems. If our staff is trained well and they're responding to if they're going to schools, they're getting that training, they're also understanding policies and we're keeping our policy up to date, that makes us better cops and makes us be able to respond to problems that, might arise. Reaching our community, the more outreach we do, more dialogue that I have with the community, the better we are. And then on top of that, investing in our team. The healthier our cops are, the better they will respond to this community problem. So the idea of our goal is just internally, just well known that, hey, we got to reduce crime. We got to keep people safe. We got to reduce collisions on our roadways. I don't have to talk about that as much that I do these other things, in my belief.
Okay. And so, yeah, and communication, you identify it through social media and outreach events, but, sometimes face-to-face walking the streets and that kind of
Yes.
stuff is important. And incentives are good. So hopefully,
Yep.
as you said, those are goals that maybe you internally understand. So with that, thank you very much. That's all
Thank
I
you.
have.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Amara. I appreciate that. Councilwoman Riddell Harris, I'm assuming you have a question or comment? I
Yes.
can't see that, but I'm going to assume that that's the case. There you go. The camera takes its time, but there you are. So please go ahead and proceed. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. First off, your social media, who does that? They're amazing. Is it a group? Is it one person? Because I loved the Valentine's Day one, the April Fool's one, the 420 one recently was quite entertaining. And I think that's contributing to getting your message out and getting, 16,000 for our small little police department is pretty dang impressive.
They're doing pretty good. So it is a team effort. Some of those are specific to one of our employees.
You're not going to disclose the
I
name?
will not disclose. Nope.
I was wondering if they could take over the city one too.
So he's doing pretty good.
Okay.
And so, but collectively, all of our social media is all of our responsibilities. Honestly, one of our strategic plan is that every team we have does at least one post,
You, Amy.
one post a week. So we're doing a pretty good job there.
Okay, great. Well, even though you won't disclose, can you tell them that I think they're doing a great job?
I will. Yes.
When I looked on your graphs, the one that stuck out, of course, was the aggravated assault, which looked like it kind of doubled in 2021 and then went back down. Were people really angry in COVID, or do you have any ideas why we had that random spike?
So we did have, during COVID, we did experience a lot of angry people stuck in their homes and those types of things. I'm hoping that becomes that anomaly
Okay.
in a 3-year, kind of tracking it 3 years. But we did have a lot of that.
Okay, I thought that might have been it, but I didn't know if there was some big fight that broke out or something that I didn't. As far as the Fun Fight Club and School Park Preserve, I feel like a lot of that stuff comes from teens being bored because there isn't a lot to do. Do you think it would be beneficial if we focused on trying to create more activities for youth to do in our community? There's not a lot to keep teens and preteens and that age group entertained in town. They're not really the folks who are into walking around and looking at shops and things like that.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question. Yes, we do. And there's a couple of things. One, looking at from a police activities league and creating a police activities league that is youth centric and focused on different activities. But also I think the city of Auburn in general with our schools and the students is unique. We have the high school.
They're in the community.
They're here, but they don't necessarily live here.
Yeah.
And so trying to get them all engaged in those types of things. And it is, I know, again, we talk about the lunchtime and after school. It's the one time that all these kids from the region are all come together. And so that's one caveat to that. But we are definitely looking into the creation of a police activities league.
I would love it if you could talk to either it be police or maybe the other departments about some of this new code ideas that are coming up, trying to figure out how we can, we used to have a Boys and Girls Club, but it moved out far away and it's now really just being used for daycare and after school care kind of programs. And we don't really have anything that kids can do after school to keep them busy. So I think that might reduce the amount of people just entertaining themselves with fight clubs. So if there's anything we can do to kind of brainstorm that, and I'd be in support of trying to work with our community members to try to figure something out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
And then I also wanted to say thank you for the invitation to the active shooter training earlier this year. I think it was really educational for me, and I would love to do more like that. So I know that sometimes I see online that like the leadership group gets to come and do stuff, and I'm always interested in seeing more of what you do. And I still need to go on that ride along that I haven't done yet. So I will. But the more invitations you can give to us to kind of see what your staff is doing and also to be engaged with them and get to know them a little bit better, I would be very excited to have more of those opportunities.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilmember Berlant, do you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. Thank you, Chief, not just for the efforts that your team is doing, but in your presentation. This one, again, I think it was last year's as well, that it just you packaged this up very, very well and easy to read. Even if you didn't provide color copies to us all, it's still the online version was really good. I really appreciate you specifically calling out the foot patrols. Obviously, I texted you over the weekend for the group here. I've really wanted to see more, more face-to-face time of our officers, specifically on Central Square, because on the summertime weekends, there's just so many people, and the officers were there, not for very long because they ran off code 3 for probably some violent crime, but it was great to see them interacting. And so really appreciate that effort to do that as they can fit that in. You had put on there the DUI arrests, and I was happy to see 2 new officers get their 23-152 pins. A big loss for us to lose our DUI all-star. And so I think that's an opportunity here in 2023 to try to get new officers to pick up the slack of the work that has been done over the last couple of years by one of your officers. But again, appreciate all of the efforts you've done and really the metrics. That was something I think we beat up your predecessor and asked for you to do, and you promised with the new system, you would do that. And so the better tracking of our data, I think, really can inform us. I'll end with, I echo Councilwoman Amara's comments. I love your goals because clearly from the amount of smiles in the photos, your investment in your staff is paying off. But I would like to see what maybe you want to do as far as addressing some of the more crime-related items. Obviously, traffic accidents, I think we're on a slight increase. So, what are some of those data points that you would like over the next year to address? Would just be helpful in a follow-up. But again, I appreciate everything you do. So thank you.
Yep. I think it shows collisions are down.
Oh, I thought I read it as an increase of 12%. But I don't want to, you know better than I do.
Well, I could be wrong.
Stop, sorry, it was traffic stops that were increased, you're right.
So
Traffic
proactivity went up.
Down. Thank you.
Collisions
That's
went down.
an important distinction. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, a very important distinction. Yes, thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. And, just for brevity purposes, Chief, I also want to thank you very much for the information. I do recognize that looking at the report online is probably you see a much better version because it is in color. But I have been looking at it in black and white. But regardless, the information is very informative, and I really do appreciate all of your efforts and the efforts of our entire police department and our dispatchers and all the work that you do to keep us safe. And I am interested in your goals as well. I appreciate Councilman Berlant bringing that point up, and I would be. I would like to hear those at a future meeting. So again, thank you very much for your report. I won't ask you any further questions as my colleagues have exhausted that effort, but I will ask if there's any public comment at this time. Madam Clerk?
There is no public comment.
All right. See, there's no public comment. This is just a presentation. There's no action on this item. So thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate it greatly. Next item on the agenda is item number 12. This is yet another presentation. And this time we're going to hear about our fiscal year 23-24 general fund. And take it away, Nathan.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. For the record, I'm Nathan Bagwell. I serve as your Director of Administrative Services. So tonight I have the opportunity and privilege to go over at a pretty high level our first touch point for the upcoming fiscal year 22-23 budget. First and foremost, I want to thank the department heads and managers who have been working diligently to help us get this to this far. So just a quick discussion, a quick look at what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to take a real high level look at our budget development process to date and our methodology. And we'll be looking at our general fund summary and forecast specifically relative to revenues and expenditures. And then we will also be looking at the general fund forecast as a whole. And then we will also have a brief touch point with CalPERS funding status. So our process thus far, staff came about a month ago and presented to the council the mid-year staff report that was reflective of the closing of the previous fiscal year, as well as any changes that have occurred in the current fiscal year. We've since been working with our department heads to determine our operating and capital outlay needs consistent with the city's priorities and goals, which then leads us to prepare a baseline budget for the upcoming fiscal year. Where we are right now is we are at the first of the 3 proposed general budget workshops. The next proposed workshop will be in 2 weeks, which we will come back with any general fund updates as needed and directed by council. We expect also to have a discussion around fund reserves, financial management policy, city fees, ARPA funding plan, as well as a draft of the capital improvement plan. 2 weeks following that, updates as needed, of course. And then we will take a look at the non-general funds, such as the airport, the sewer, transit, transportation. And I will also be discussing general fund discretionary support, which is our committees and commissions at that time. So first and foremost, we'll start with by mentioning that the proposed budget for the fiscal year maintains current levels of services for the community. So what we do as our methodology, just briefly, is we take an incremental approach. So we start with our baseline budget forecast. If you recall, last year we had a year of forecasts that were coming into this year. So we're taking a look at those forecasted projections that were printed in the budget document, and we're coming back and updating them essentially. And as part of that process, it's data driven. So we're analyzing trends. We're considering department requests for increases and decreases based on use and trends of the last 4 to 5 years. Important to note that all positions are considered 100% funded throughout the entirety of the forecast. And so we take all of this information and we use this data and we come up with a baseline budget. So we'll start off with taking a real high level look at revenues. So what we projected a year ago was about 16.75 million revenue for the general fund. We're now projecting 17 million. So it is a difference of about 200,000 to 300,000, but that doesn't really tell the story. There is a reduction in the anticipated use of fund balance, which was about $700,000 for the coming year. The reason for this is there was a big project that was 1.4 million in fund balance for the Crimson Court Sunrise Ridge that came in this year, 1 year instead of 2 and under budget. So we will no longer be anticipating to use fund balance in the coming year. So we got it all done in this year. But from a budgetary standpoint, we are no longer budgeting that $700,000 of revenue in next year. So that's going to be that kind of drop. However, the revenue comes back up because sales tax based on actuals and trends over the last few years continues to increase. So that's coming up about $550,000, as well as some incremental increases based on, again, actuals from property taxes and the return of strike team revenue. If you recall, during COVID, there was also a staffing crisis with the fire department. We weren't able to get out 2 years ago. This year, we were able to do that. And it does look like we're going to be able to continue to do that. So that explains the delta there in revenues. Looking at expenditures at a really high level, a year ago, very similar, 16.77 million. We're now at about 17 million in anticipated total expenditure funding. Important to note that this does include 2.16 million in our ongoing pension costs. This, of course, includes our normal costs, debt service, and any unfunded accrued liabilities. The increases in the anticipated expenditures are largely tied to personnel modifications throughout the current fiscal year. We mentioned the inclusion with the Chief Canan's presentation of the problem-oriented policing program. This is partially offset by grant funding. However, we did increase the organizational staffing by 4 positions in police, and we also have transitioned a human resources manager to a director position. It is important to note that there are no new full-time equivalents or reclassifications proposed with the upcoming fiscal year budget. So we're going to take a look now at the general fund forecast. At the mid-year budget update, Staff was anticipating that there would be a $34,000 deficit in the current fiscal year, which is the FY 22-23. As you can now see, we've had an opportunity to get some more actuals, some more time under our belt. We now anticipate that we're going to have a surplus at the end of the current fiscal year of about $71,000. Staff wants to acknowledge that we are currently right now in the process of negotiating with our 6 labor groups. So as you see right here, as it stands in the coming fiscal year 23-24, we are showing a deficit spending of $87,000. This does not anticipate any compensation. So staff recognizes that some things need to be moved around. So we are working diligently towards that end, and we will be coming back with recommendations to address that. And just as a caveat too, these numbers are not intended to be final. Staff continues to work hard to revise and refine as we are able to. So expect this to change, but large changes in this will be as a result of council direction, changes in priority. So this brings us to a discussion about our CalPERS costs. This is always an interesting topic because with CalPERS, it's also subject to market. So briefly what this, for the benefit of those who've not seen this graph before, the red line at the top represents what the unfunded accrued liability was going to be for the city. And what that is that's above and beyond what your normal cost is on an annual basis. So just to go quickly through what these bars represent, the blue is the normal cost. That is having a public employee with a pension program. The orange represents the unfunded accrued liability. And then the green represents, and you can see the green kind of goes back some previous years, the city has had a pension obligation bond. What happened in fiscal year 2021 was the city issued a new pension obligation bond that consolidated the one that we had previously and actually allowed the city to capitalize on an opportunity to lock in the interest and pay significantly less on an annual basis, saving the city roughly $500,000 on an annual basis as a result of that move. As you notice, the orange gets a little smaller and then it gets small in 21-22 and 22-23, and then you don't see the orange anymore. That's because PERS is always 2 years behind with their actuarial valuations. So what you're seeing right now is actually what PERS had as our bill 2 years ago. So what's interesting is for 23-24, a couple of really good things, but of course, we're not going to rest our laurels on them. We do not currently have an anticipated bill for UAL in the coming year. So as of right now, you go on PERS and look us up for the coming year, our unfunded accrued liability bill is 0. Could that change? It's happened before where PERS will hit you up in the middle of the year. Notably, we do have $1 million. We'll talk about our reserves next time, but we have $1 million of pension stability fund too. So we have some coverage for that. Also of note, all of the city's tiers right now through PERS are at or above 100% funded. So that's great. However, we do anticipate, we're going to get it in August of this year. We're going to see what the actuarial was as of 2 years ago. Councilmember Berlant already knows the last 6 months PERS haven't been especially great. Yeah, we anticipate some cost to increase. Yeah, it never gets cheaper to do business with PERS, but we are on solid footing. Council has been very proactive, and this is a result of that, resulting in a strategic management use of these resources, and it's to be commended for that. So a point of clarification here, in my excitement to get in front of you and talk budget, the next workshop is actually on May 8th, not May 22nd. So you'll see me again in 2 weeks. Very exciting for me. I do really like this stuff. Well, and 2 weeks, not May 22nd, May 8th, we will be discussing general fund reserves, city fees and financial management policy. We will be coming back with an ARPA funding plan with updates on our current projects and spending, and receive direction from council on the upcoming year's spending plan. And we also intend to bring back a draft of the capital improvement plan again on May 8th, not the 23rd. So that completes my presentation for this evening. Be more than happy to answer any questions you may have regarding anything we've discussed tonight.
Thank you very much, Nathan. I appreciate that very much. I'll go ahead and open this to questions and comments from council members at this time. Councilman Berlant.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 quick questions. Thank you for flagging the CalPERS. Obviously, their discount rate is set at 7%. Is that what this is assuming, or are we assuming the negative 6.1% that they actually earned in 21-22? What are the assumptions that this is based off of?
So thank you for the question. The assumptions is based on the published assumptions going forward. So they haven't updated those assumptions yet. So when they do, we will of course build them into our forecasts. So these are not reflective of anything that's happened since 21 onward.
Thank you for that. Let me ask it another way. In the ongoing years here, what is our assumption of what are we assuming that they are going to be asking for that they are making their investment goals and they're asking for
Are we assuming that they're going to lower the discount rate,
Yeah,
increase our
there-
bill?
Yes.
We don't assume that until they tell us that. But what we do is we budget $125,000 in our general fund budget in addition to any PERS obligation whatsoever. So what ends up happening in the last couple of years, we have got UAL bills.
Mhm,
So if we don't get that,
mhm.
council will have a decision point if you want to slide that into the pension stability fund and or use for other. But we are also sensitive to that. So that's an unknown.
Okay, yeah.
And what we're trying not to do is tie up funds for things that could or could not happen. So that's going to be maybe part of another discussion that we come back and discuss with council as to how you would like to strategize that. And we'll have some recommendations for you as well.
So what I hear you say is you're budgeting 125,000.
Yes.
In the budget, if the bill comes higher. But we also have our $1 million down from two,
That's
$1 million pension designated reserve, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat my concern. I already said that last meeting. My last question here and you briefed on it at the beginning, so I think I followed correctly. May 22nd, just to be clear, is when we will hear from our committees on our discretionary spending, correct?
That is our intention.
Has direction gone out by you or by city management to our committees and our commissions on what we are expecting from them for that meeting? So
It was going to be, and we actually ended up pushing it out because there were so many things. Initially, it was going to be May 8th. So one of the conversations I've had was Mr. Kramer from the Sustainability Advisory Committee has been asking me about this. So that's a recent revision. So we had so many things on the 8th council. And if council prefers, we can push that up. But we had so many things on the 8th council that we went ahead and moved a couple things back to the 22nd so as to not to, overburden that one conversation.
yeah, no, it's a good question. So there is a workshop the 8th and there's a workshop on the 22nd.
That's correct.
The committee's commissions, our discretionary funding, we're going to discuss on the 22nd. And so just to be clear, are we asking for a work plan from them or asking for an updated budget? What direction, the multiple questions there, what direction have you given to them of what they should have prepared for us for that meeting?
Thank you. And I want to compliment our commissions and committees because they have been responsive to our requests. So we started communicating with them about a month and a half ago, letting them know that we were looking for a couple things, a fiscal year end projection, but also a detailed work plan with deliverables and dates and all of the such. And all of them have got that back to us. So we're in the process right now of formulating and gathering all of that information.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's the only questions I have.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Lamb. Just to follow up on that, we actually did talk about that, the committee budget for the Auburn Endurance Capital of the World. So we do appreciate it. I'll go to Councilwoman Bradell Harris.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you for putting this together. I know this is a lot of hard work. I worked on city budgets and stuff, and there's a lot going on, and you are in your crunch time. And so I appreciate all your hard work on this. This looks great. I want to ask you all kinds of details on this, but I know that's not this meeting, and that you're going to bring the details back to us in the next two meetings for all of this stuff. So I will wait and ask you lots of fun questions when we get all the meat behind all of these high level projections. Thank
I
you.
will look forward to it. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Amara.
Yes, just I want to thank you for actually separating out the workshops the way you did, because it is overwhelming to have it all at once. So thank you. I
Sure.
appreciate that. And I appreciate this presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that. And again, I agree with my colleagues. It's great to have this divided up. It does make it a little bit easier for us. And I think for the public too, for transparency purposes. I just had a really quick question. During our last budgetary process, we established a sort of a grant program in increments of $10,000. We awarded $10,000 to the State Theater and $10,000 to the Auburn Symphony. And then there was another $20,000 to $10,000 increments that were available. And I know we had the transition with the city manager, and I'm not sure if anyone even applied for those funds, but it seems like this would be the time now, or Nathan, can you remind us of the deadlines for those grant applications? It was community support monies is actually what it was, but we established a program, we adopted a form. I just can't remember what the time frame was, because it seems like we should be getting those requests now as we talk about the budget.
I certainly appreciate it. And I have been getting questions from the community. So thank you for the opportunity to address that. So yes, you're absolutely right. There was a process that was brought forward, and it does involve an application, and it does involve people, folks putting in their request and the city considering that. One of the things that the city manager and I have been sitting down and really taking a hard look at is that process and ensuring that it's transparent and inclusive. We are still working out some of the details on that. So that is not meant to delay the response to you, just to let you know that, yes, we have addressed that, and we will be coming forward with a recommendation as to how that will go forward. We're just not quite there yet.
Okay, so we haven't actually then asked folks to make those applications. I say this because I know, I'm sure that my colleagues have all heard about this, and much of the public, it was reported in the Auburn Journal, but there was some structural damage at the State Theater. And I know that they are looking for assistance. They will be looking for assistance to help with that. So I want to be prepared to provide that. I appreciated my colleagues' support in providing them with $10,000 during the last budget cycle. And I know that now there's an even greater need given the construction costs that are affiliated with those repairs. So thank you, and looking forward for an update on that. And again, thank you so much for your report tonight. And we do look forward to diving deep in the weeds on this. And good news on the PERS report. That was one of the best decisions we've ever made with regards to the unfunded liabilities. And I'd love to see that chart, the Spokely chart. I think we renamed it. So thank you so very much. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on this item?
There is no public comment.
Thank you very much. I can see you lean into the picture there, Amy. So it's awesome. All right, good. Okay, let me grab the agenda here. And the next item on the agenda, we have yet another presentation. This is a continuation from our last meeting. This is on SB 1439. And Gary, take it away, please.
All right, thank you all. I too will join you at the podium this evening. So we're going to talk tonight about SB 1439. Some of you probably heard about this. The League of Cities has been very active, both when the legislation was being proposed, when it was signed, and then now through the implementation process. This is a bit of a sea change in how this council conducts business here at public meetings and also at other times. So it's worth noting and thinking about separately. It does require new rules for recusal and reporting and tracking, not just by the clerk, but by each of you individually.
What a catchy tune.
I know. Okay, next slide, please. So the Political Reform Act regulates campaign contributions. As you all know, there are quarterly filings that you do with the city and also the FPPC, 90-day filings before an election as well. In addition to that, it regulates how you all participate in public decisions. It's always regulated and required recusal when a decision involves your income, your personal finances, your real property, or your business or investment interests. And as you and the public know, occasionally that happens. You make a comment on the record and then you recuse yourself from that proceeding. But those rules have never applied to campaign contributions. And in fact, the Political Reform Act has always exempted campaign contributions from the definition of income and has not required it previously for campaign contributors to you to require a recusal from those proceedings. Well, this law does just that. And so it has applied those rules now to you in your elected positions. It was first adopted in 1982. Political Reform Act created the Fair Political Practices Commission, which adopts regulations to help us all understand and flesh out the details of the Political Reform Act. It requires your recusal from certain decisions if you've accepted a campaign contribution. There are ways to return that contribution that we'll talk about in a second here. It also prohibits you from accepting a campaign contribution after you have participated and made a decision. So the law includes a look back provision for 12 months and a look forward provision for 12 months. Slightly different rules for each of those that we'll talk about here in a second. So this law has been on the books since 1982, and so have the FPPC regulations interpreting and applying it. But it always used to apply only to appointed elected officials. So it applied to the planning commissioners here in the city. It also applied to you when you were acting in appointed regional boards like LAFCO and other regional appointments that this council and other bodies make. But it never used to apply to you in your elected position here at the city, but now it does. So it extends the same rules and regulations with a few changes to you in your elected position. Importantly, it only applies to licenses, permits, and land use entitlements. And those mean very specific things. It doesn't apply to everything you do here at the city. It only applies to some things. And we'll look at a definition of that in just a sec. So there's 3 requirements here for recusal to think about separately. The first is a recusal. You cannot make, participate in making, or influence an entitlement proceeding if you received a contribution of more than $250 within the 12 months before that proceeding from any party, participant, or agent in that proceeding. You must disclose it on the record before you recuse yourself. You can also return that contribution as well, and there's a procedure for that. While a proceeding is pending, you also cannot receive a contribution of more than $250. Although there's an open question about when a proceeding is pending. Somebody submits an application at the planning or building department. Is it pending at that moment? Is it pending when it appears on an agenda for a meeting? Those are the questions that the FPPC is going to answer with regulations that are not quite adopted, but will be answered, because it's an important distinction, because it will dictate when you have to recuse yourself and the window during which you're prohibited from accepting these types of contributions. And then once you've made the decision, you're prohibited from accepting a contribution of more than $250 from any party, participant, or their agent in that proceeding. A party is a person who files an application or is the subject of the proceeding for a license, permit, or entitlement for use. A participant is anyone who is not a party, so not a person who submitted an application, but who actively supports or opposes a particular decision in a proceeding and has a financial interest. Second one here will create some practical implications for us and the meetings here at City Hall, for the clerk and also for you all. A participant is someone who stands at the podium where I'm standing right now and has an opinion about something that's before you. If I did not submit the application, but actively support or opposed it, including giving public comment, that person is a participant. If that participant has given more than $250 in contribution to any council member and has a financial interest in the decision, then the council member who received that contribution has to recuse themselves from that proceeding. An agent is any person who acts on their behalf of a party or a participant. So that might be someone who is paid to advocate on behalf of an applicant or a party, or their architect, for example, or their engineer, or their attorney who shows up here at City Hall and advocates on their behalf or participates in the proceeding on their behalf. A financial interest has the same meaning as the Political Reform Act. So for a participant to require recusal, that participant has to have a financial interest. Not only is this a practical tracking issue for you all, because you won't know whether or not a participant is going to participate until the meeting actually occurs and someone comes and gives you public comment. But on top of that, the clerk and you all are supposed to know whether or not that participant has a financial interest in the decision. That's the same kind of financial interest that would require you all to recuse yourselves. Income, real property, personal finances, business, and investments. The FPPC is proposing a rule that you only know about a participant's financial interest if their public comments make it clear. So if a participant were to say, and I live right around the block, then you might know that they own real property nearby, for example. The other financial interests are a little unclear how that would come up in public comment about your personal finances and your business investments, but that's what the FPPC is proposing. A license, permit, or other entitlement for use. It only applies to decisions that affect these three things. It includes business, professional, trade, and land use licenses and permits, and all other entitlements for land use, and all contracts and all franchises, including solid waste and cable franchises that come before the council occasionally, other than contracts that are competitively bid, labor, so MOUs with your bargaining units, and personal employment contracts, such as those with your department heads, city managers, and others that you might approve from time to time. So it excludes the type of public works contracts that come before you regularly, because those are competitively bid. It excludes MOUs with bargaining units, and it excludes employment contracts, but it includes all other contracts and all franchises. There's a request for the FPPC to further clarify this, because the first part of that definition seems to mean that it's related to land use in some way, a permit regarding land use or entitlements. But then at the end there, it says all contracts, meaning perhaps it applies to all contracts. So we are asking for clarification on that, but this is currently the law right now. So in determining your own disqualification, you first ask if a party, an applicant, or a participant, someone speaking at the podium, has made a contribution of more than $250 to one of you. Then whether it was made in the last 12 months before the application was filed or while it's pending. And then if the conflict has to do with a participant, whether or not that participant has a financial interest. So you know or have reason to know that a person has a financial interest if the person is a party, or if the person is a participant and reveals facts in a written or oral support or opposition before the agency. And that's where during the public testimony, the participant says, I own a home around the corner, or I actually invested in this business, or something like that during public comment. You know or should have known about a pending proceeding if you have actual knowledge of the proceeding. So if you happen to know that a business has submitted an application here to the city, you found that out some other way. You received notice of the proceeding, including receiving agenda or a docket identifying the proceeding or the persons by name. So certainly when an agenda is posted, you all will know that that proceeding is pending, because at that moment you all receive the agenda and it's on the agenda for decision. Prior to that, you might actually learn about an application being filed, and it would be pending before you when you had that actual information. You know or should have known about a contribution when you have actual knowledge of the contribution, or the contribution was disclosed by the party. You all, when you receive contributions, you're tracking those separately. You have a process for that, and you file disclosures for those as well. So you must disclose the contribution at the beginning of the hearing before recusing yourself. This is the same procedure you're all familiar with when you have a financial interest. You disclose it. If you don't have a hearing, the contribution must be entered into the written record of the proceeding. You can send that over to your city clerk. She can include that in the record. The disclosure has to include the name of the recipient, the name of the amount of the contribution, and the date the contribution was made. And then you recuse yourself from the hearing and not attempt to influence it in any way. And the remaining council members will stay behind and will make that decision. You can participate if you return it within 30 days of the time you know or should have known about the contribution and the proceeding. You have to know about both of those things and return it within 30 days. So you'll know about the contribution when received and when you're tracking it. The proceeding, you'll know about it when you actually find out about it or when it appears on an agenda, and you can return it within 30 days and then still participate in the proceeding. If you accept, solicit, or direct a contribution greater than $250 within 12 months following a decision, so after you've made a decision, you can cure the violation by returning the contribution within 14 days. It's a shorter window there. But you can't cure it if you knowingly and willfully accepted, solicited, or directed the contribution. So it cannot be a contribution that you actively sought out and asked for or directed, like a behest payment. It has to be something that came into your campaign without you actively asking for it. The officer or their control committee must maintain a record of any cured violations so that you can prove this up later if needed. So a few suggestions on how to track this. There's a lot of data and a lot of information, and it requires a lot of each of you. And each of you have different contributions, and each of you know things at different times. So this creates a bit of a headache for staff and also for all of you. So a few things for us to all consider here, and other cities are considering as well. Review your Form 460s. You're likely doing that already, but you can include it on your iPad here at City Hall, or somewhere that's easily accessible for you so that you can look up names and think about them as you're reviewing agendas and also as people are giving public comment here at City Hall. You can add language to meeting agendas, noting a party's participant age's duty to disclose contributions. You'll be happy to know with the most updated revised agenda, we've already done that. Some council members may consider limiting contributions below the threshold. That is, of course, all up to you. There's nothing in this law that prohibits a contribution. That is an option, though. But you can still accept and then comply with this law. And it's the over $250 limit that triggers this law, of course. So a contribution below that would not require you to comply with this. There are some clarifications to come. There are regulations in the works right now by the FPPC, soon to be adopted, that will clarify some of the questions that we've raised tonight. We still have this presentation because this law is in place. It requires compliance, so we're talking about it. But there will be regulations that change some of this. Some of them will limit prohibition to only proceedings pending before the council member as opposed to pending before the agency at large, meaning that something will not be pending until it actually appears on an agenda. There has also been litigation filed seeking to invalidate the law altogether as an unconstitutional infringement on your First Amendment rights as elected officials to receive campaign contributions. The Political Reform Act was adopted by voters statewide in 1974. Typically, measures adopted by voters can't be changed by the legislature. Political Reform Act says the legislature can amend it, but only to further its purposes. The legislature amends it from time to time. Whenever they do, they get sued, and sometimes their amendments are overturned and sometimes they're upheld. So this is another one of those lawsuits that we'll see. There might be changes or invalidation, or there will be more clarification from the FPPC in any event. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, if there are.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. I really appreciate this. It's very complicated and to some respect. I mean, there's so many moving parts, and making sure that we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we know who's been contributing, how much, when, and when those decisions. I just find it really interesting. And it's not just a project proponent, but that if somebody gets up and speaks to us during public comment in support of a project that they might have a financial interest in, but they're not the project proponent. So, I mean, I just find it very interesting. I'm all for transparency, but
yeah, another thing to consider in that regard, and I know that the city has not used speaker cards in the past, but some cities do use speaker cards, and the ones who do are considering a statement on them that requires the participant to disclose in advance whether or not they've given a contribution to any council member, so that the clerk could then announce that and council members could know. So that is something that you consider for tracking this in advance, and might make it a little easier.
yeah, and I would like to explore that, because I mean, it just becomes very difficult for some of us. I mean, again, there's the 12 months before, the 12 months after, and you just don't know who's going to speak on something, So it would be good, I think, if we could, have a discussion with our city clerk and our city manager to maybe develop those speaker cards. I have been in jurisdictions where they do have those. It's just a matter of asking folks to fill them out. But it would make things easier, as I think, for us to ensure we have compliance if we had something like that. Otherwise, it's like you said, having your Form 60 with you every meeting, and then looking at that list to see. So thank you very much. Questions or comments from my colleagues? I don't see any at this point, so thank you so very much, Gary, for your presentation. Next item on the agenda, as we're wrapping up here, we have our city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A part of my report is going to be from Jonathan Wright, our Director of Community and Economic Development, if he is still on. He is. So while our clerk is bringing him up, I'll just touch base on a couple of other things. I think probably most of you are aware that we had the drug drop off for Placer County yesterday, and our parking lot was used for that. Public Works was out there assisting and doing a great job, and I just want to recognize them for that. You also probably noticed when you came in this evening that we still have a number of the parking spaces blocked off, and that's for the canyons. We will be having some staging out here. There was a final meeting this afternoon to make sure that everybody is on board with what they are to be doing, and Public Works, police, fire, everybody is in tune. The local contact did meet with me after that meeting and said everything is great. They're looking forward to it, and that's going to be a big event for the city coming up this weekend.
Hey, Joan, one of the things that I had asked for on this is for us to keep track of our costs for the canyon. So that way we know for next year how much it's going to cost us and what those.
Yes, we'll
impacts are.
keep track of the hours. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Jonathan is now online.
Before we go to Jonathan, I'm sorry, Jonathan, just really quick on canyons. Madam City Manager, I had a constituent raise a concern that Caltrans is doing the roundabout construction on 49, and whether or not the construction starts on Friday. And I don't know how that's going to impact actual 49 if they're just doing the work next to it. But I think that we probably need to reach out to Caltrans and just make sure that we're not going to have delays, because we've got folks coming in and out of that canyon, the race and so forth. We just need to make that smooth. So if you could please follow up with Caltrans on that, I would really appreciate that. Report back to me and I can get back to the constituent on it. It might not be a problem, especially if Chaz didn't raise it, but I did have a constituent raise it and I don't have an answer for that. So thank you. Jonathan, please proceed. I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask that since we were talking about the canyons.
No problem. I just want to brief the council real quick on the, by the way, Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director, City of Auburn. Just brief the council really quick on the activities that have been transpiring out at the airport. Most people aren't aware, except for some of the neighbors because of increased activity, that only a few months ago we had these winter, what do they call them, rain and snow events that occupied many months. And the Auburn Airport was one of the few that was actually servicing some of the emergency operations out there. And it required us to close portions of the ramp to allow for PG&E emergency helicopters to get in and out. Our users of the airport were very accommodating. Everybody understood the need. And because of our Auburn Airport, we were able to help and assist many of our communities nearby to get the power back on and to recover as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to highlight that. I also want to point out that tomorrow we're having our 5AC safety meeting out at the airport, in which we are a sponsor, as well as Ty Richardson, who is the one who coordinated a lot of the ramp closures and so forth for the PG&E helicopters, is also giving a noise abatement discussion with them tomorrow. So that is all happening, and just not going to take any more time. We're getting late, but just wanted to highlight some of the good things that having an airport such as the Auburn Airport can mean for not just us, but the surrounding neighborhoods.
Thank you so very much, Jonathan. Appreciate that. Do you have any questions for Jonathan, council? Madam City Manager, does that conclude your report?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any pressing need to report anything out, City Council, since our next item is on report? I'll defer my reports. It is effectively 11:24 p.m. here on the East Coast, so I'll defer my reporting until our next meeting. Does anyone have anything that's pressing to report out? Okay, hearing none, I'll go ahead then, and without objection, adjourn the meeting. And thank you so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your evening. And I'll see you all at Canyons. Oh, I did want to say one thing really quick. I'm sorry. I was going to mention that I'd like to, without objection, adjourn our meeting. Rad McCord, who was another pillar of our community, he was the son of my mentor, Annabelle McCord. He passed away last week. It was a very sad event, but he did so. He was actually actively riding his bike. I know that he had some heart failure, and they thought that maybe he was going to recover, but unfortunately he did not. So my deepest condolences to the family, and without objection, we will adjourn our meeting in his memory tonight, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more about celebration of life. Rad, of course, was a coach at Placer High School for a number of years and has done a lot for our community. So with that said, without objection, we are here.